أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي ربي يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلتها سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا اللهم انفعني بما علمتني وعلمني ما ينفعني وزدني علما آمين يا رب العالمين. Okay, so we're doing starting from verse 218. So innal lazina amanu wal lazina hajaru wajahadu fi sabilillah ulaika yarjuna rahmatallahi wallahu ghafurur rahim. Okay, so certainly those who have believed and those who have immigrated and have fought in the way of Allah, those have hope of Allah's mercy, and Allah is oft forgiving, most merciful. So this is talking about people who believed in Allah and people who migrated for Allah and people who fought in the way of Allah, basically jihad. So jihad, it denotes doing one's utmost to achieve something. It is not equivalent of war, for which the Arabic word is qital, and qital comes from qatl. Qatl means to kill or something. Jihad has a wider connotation and embraces every kind of striving in God's cause, like every single kind. It could be, it doesn't have to be only fighting. It could be even, fighting within yourself, like fighting with your desires or working for Allah. It basically means you have to strive and struggle for the cause of Allah. A mujahid is a person, mujahid comes from one who does jihad. A mujahid is a person who is single-mindedly devoted to his cause, who uses his mental capacity to reflect how best he can achieve it, propagates it by word of mouth and by the pen, uses his physical energy in striving to serve it, spends all resources, all the force he commands in confronting any power which might stand in its way, and whenever necessary, does not commit shirk, risking his life for it. All of this is jihad. So jihad in way is that strife in which man engages exclusively to win God's good pleasure, to establish the supremacy of a religion and to make his word prevail. So jihad could be by pen, it could be by, by pen means by education. Either you learn, if you're learning for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you're learning for him, if you're educating yourself for him, or if you're teaching others. Both of these are jihad. And if you, let's say if you die, okay, let's say you were going to learn about Quran or Hadith or anything about Islam and you die on the way, that is, you are a martyr. You died while doing jihad. If you're teaching someone, okay, you are still doing jihad. If you spend your wealth, your property on like in the way of Islam for other people, with Allah's name, that is jihad. If you and obviously fighting with yourself, fighting with your desires. There's so many desires that we have, we like wrong desires that we want to commit, we want to achieve that and those might be sins. But fighting within yourself, like, no, I have to stop doing that. Or even like, for example, waking up for Fajr is a very difficult task for a lot of people because you're sleeping and then you have to wake up and it's kind of like, it's still like night and people don't like waking up, but you fight yourself. You're like, no, I have to wake up because I have to pray. That is also a kind of jihad. So there's so many jihad that, and most people think that it's only based on fighting for Allah, but it's just not that. There's different categories, various categories for jihad. Verse 219. يسألونك عن الخمر والميسر قل فيهما اسم كبير ومنافع للناس وإثمها ما أكبر من نفعهما ويسألونك ماذا ينفقون قل العفو كذلك يبين الله لكم الآيات لعلكم تتفكرون. They ask you, O Muhammad, about wine and gambling. Say, in them is great sin and some benefit for people, and the sin of them is greater than their benefit. And they ask you what they should spend. Say, that which is beyond your needs. Thus Allah makes clear to you his verses that you might give thought. Now this verse is about people who asked about gambling and drinking. So Allah, like this is the first injunction concerning intoxicating drinks and gambling, and here the matter has been left merely as an expression of disapproval. This was a preliminary step designed to prepare the minds of people for the acceptance of their prohibition. The injunction prohibiting the performance of prayer when in state of intoxication came later, and ultimately alcohol, gambling, and like were categorically prohibited. So here, Allah is making it haram for gambling and wine. It is haram in this verse. So people are, Allah says that, in them, it's a great sin and some benefit, like in gambling or drinking, there is some benefit. For drinking, you are not in your senses and then you forget. If let's say you are in pain or something, it could be emotional pain or physical pain. And if you drink, you might forget about that because you drink, it takes you away from your senses. And then gambling is although it's one-sided, it's a one-sided benefit, it's still a benefit, right? A person who wins gambling, who wins in the gamble, a game, it is it is like it falls into his advantage. So there is an advantage in there, but there is a bigger sin in it. First of all, you lose your senses. You could do anything. You cannot, decide. You cannot judge between what's right and what's wrong. And then gambling is you're giving away your property for just a game, and you could either have all of their money too and yours too, but you could all just give it away too. So and people just do not only gamble on their property, they gamble on their lives. It's just giving away your precious life that Allah has given to you. You're just giving it away for nothing, for just a game. You believe so much in that game. So although it is of some benefit for some people, it is more of a sin. And that sin is even greater than the benefit people receive. So, and they ask you what they should spend. Say that which is beyond your needs. So it's like, if you don't need it, if you don't need that thing, you should give it away. Instead of throwing it, you should just give it away. But you have to make sure that that thing is still usable, not something that is old and broken and torn. Something that you would, if you had no choice, you would still keep, right? If you could, you would still keep it. If someone would give it to you, you would still keep it. You wouldn't just give away. Would you take something that's broken or old, or if it's not good, why would you give it away? So you have to give something that you don't need. Do not throw it away. Do not waste it. And also you have to make sure it looks good and it is usable. Verse 220. في الدنيا والآخرة ويسألونك عن اليتامى قل إصلاح لهم خير وإن تخالطوهم فإخوانكم والله يعلم المفسد من المصلح ولو شاء الله لعنتكم إن الله عزيز حكيم. In the world and in the hereafter. And they ask you about how to deal with the orphans. Say improvement for them is the best. And if you mix your affairs with theirs, then they are your brothers. And Allah knows him who corrupts orphans' property from him who improves it. And if Allah had willed, he could have put you into difficulties. Indeed, Allah is Almighty, All-Wise. So this verse starts within the world and hereafter, which is related to this verse. As Allah makes you clear to you his verses that you might give thought in the world and the hereafter. Okay, so hold up just 1 minute. Okay, so before this verse was revealed, many severe injunctions had already been revealed regarding the protection of orphans' property. It had been ordained that people should not even draw near to the property of orphan, and that those who wrongfully eat the properties of orphans only fill their bellies with fire. Because of these severe injunctions, the orphans' guardians were so overawed that they even separated the food and drink of the orphans from their own. They felt anxious lest anything belonging to the orphans became mixed with their own. It is for this reason that they inquired of Prophet what the proper form of their dealings with orphans should be. So, for example, people, they knew that people, first of all, they used to take away orphans property and stuff because they thought the orphans do not need it, and then they used to think orphans are inferior to them, so they just take away their property, which was wrong because Allah said that it was said that I think it was a hadith that taking away orphans property is like eating orphans property is like eating fire in your stomach. So now people got confused. They would even separate the food and everything. The orphans would have separate food, and then they would have separate food just because they were confused. That is why they inquired Prophet about it. And in this verse Allah says that if you mix your affairs with theirs, then you are brothers. So now, like, you can eat together, you can live together, you can sleep together. That is completely okay because you are letting them in your life, and that is how you can become brothers. Like, you could be a family that way. And then in the next verse it says, and Allah knows him who corrupts orphan properties from him who improves it. So now, if you're letting him live with you, if you're giving him your food, if you're giving him your if you're sharing lives with each other, then you're improving a orphan's property. If you're improving their lives. But if you're taking away their own property without their permission and wrongfully, that is, you are corrupting it. So Allah can easily tell. Of course, Allah knows what is in people's hearts, so He could tell who is corrupting an orphan's property and who is improving it. So, and then Allah says, and if Allah had willed, He could have put you into difficulties, because Allah obviously has the power, to take away anything. He's the giver and the taker. So whatever He has given to you, He will take it away. He could give you hardships, then He could take away the hardships. He could give you ease and then take away the ease. It could be anything. Allah can do anything. Your life might be going right in a second, and then in a second, everything might just go upside down. Allah is so powerful. He could change anything for anyone, and He could put you into difficulties. Verse 221. ولا تنكحوا المشركات حتى يؤمننا ولمة مؤمنة خير من مشركة ولا أعجبتكم ولا تنكحوا المشركين حتى يؤمنوا ولا عبد مؤمن خير من مشرك ولو أعجبكم أولئك يدعون إلى النار والله يدعو إلى الجنة والمغفرة بإذنه ويبين آياته للناس لعلهم يتذكرون. And do not marry women who associate others with Allah until they believe. And a believing slave woman is better than a free woman who associates others with Allah, even though she pleases you. And do not marry men who associate others with Allah until they believe. And a believing slave man is better than a free man who associates others with Allah, even though he pleases you. They invite to the fire, and Allah invites the garden, and forgiveness by His permission, and He makes clear His verses to the people that they may remember. So this is the reason for and the wisdom underlying the injunction mentioned above prohibiting marriage links with polytheists. Marriage does not consist merely of sexual relations between a man and a woman. It is a relationship which has deep social, moral, and emotional implications. If established between a believer and a polytheist, this kind of relationship has many possible outcomes. On the one hand, it is possible that because of the influence of the believing spouse, the other partner, the family, and the future generations may be receptive to Islamic beliefs and to the Islamic way of life. On the other hand, it is also possible that the spouse who is a polytheist Polytheist may influence the thinking and mode of living of the believing spouse and the family and the future generations. Moreover, this relationship may promote in that family a hodgepodge of Islam, downright atheism, and polytheism, which, however, welcome to non-Muslims, is in no way acceptable to Islam. No true believer can run the risk that either the ideas and lifestyles which are organically related to atheism and polytheism may flourish among the members of his family, or that some aspect of his own life may bear the impress of atheism and polytheism. So, but like again, since in this verse it's mentioned that do not marry men who associate until they believe. A man can, however, marry a woman who is a Christian or a Jew, or maybe let's say who believes in the book, who believes in Torah or Bible. He can still marry them because those women believe in Allah, right? And why a man can marry the woman and a woman cannot marry the man who believes in a book is because a man in Islam, a man has more power, right? A woman is supposed to obey what his husband says, right? That's how Islam that's what Islam commands, right? So now if a man is marrying a woman, he can maybe influence the woman, right? But if a woman marries a man, she will have to do whatever the man says, and a man could maybe ask that woman to do whatever, like to do what is against Islam. But if it's a man, like if it's the other way around, a man can do whatever he wants to, right? So a woman could not force him to do anything. So that is why a man can marry a woman for a woman of book, for example, Torah or Bible, but a woman cannot. And it's written that if marrying a slave woman, a Muslim slave woman, is 1,000 times better than marrying a free woman who is attractive to you, who attracts you, but she associates partners with Allah. That is and then in this verse it's written that they invite you to the fire. So marrying those women, they would influence you to like do something against Islam, and that is you going to fire. But going on the right path, marrying someone who is a believer, they would want you to they would want you to be the best of Muslim you could be, right? So that's Allah's way, right? And the Allah's way is like a way of paradise and forgiveness. Verse 222. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْمَحِيضِ قُلْ هُوَ أَذًى فَاعْتَزِلُوا النِّسَاءَ فِي الْمَحِيضِ وَلَا تَقْرَبُوهُنَّ حَتَّى يَطْهُرْنَ فَإِذَا تَطَهَّرْنَ فَأْتُوهُنَّ مِنْ حَيْثُ أَمَرَكُمُ اللَّهُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ التَّوَّابِينَ وَيُحِبُّ الْمُتَطَهِّرِينَ. And they ask you, O Muhammad, about menstruation. Say it is a hurt, so keep away from women during menstruation and do not approach them until they are cleansed. So when they have purified themselves, then go to them from where Allah has ordained upon you. Indeed, Allah loves those who turn to Him in repentance, and He loves those who purify themselves. So the word adha denotes both a state of ritual impurity and sickness. Menstruation is not merely an impurity, but also a state in which woman is closer to sickness than to health. With regards to matters such as these, the Quran resorts to metaphors and figurative language. Hence, it instructs men not to approach to women. This does not mean that people should either abstain from sitting together on the same floor or eating together when a woman has her monthly period, making her virtually untouchable, as has been the custom among the Jews, Hindus, and certain other nations. So like Jews and Hindus and those people, you would, not sit with their women at all. They would, when they are on their period, they would just, keep them away from themselves. They would separate themselves from each other. They would not even see them, not talk to them. they would just completely separate them. So the explanation of this injunction by the Prophet makes it clear that during this period, men are only required to abstain from sexual intercourse. No change is postulated in other relationships, and the woman is to be treated in the normal way. So the command of God mentioned here is not formal legal injunction from God, but that inherent urge with which the nature of both men and animals has been imbued and which is apprehended instinctively. Verse 223. نساؤكم حرث لكم فأتوا حرثكم أن شئتم وقدموا لأنفسكم واتقوا الله واعلموا أنكم ملاقوه وبشر المؤمنين. Your women are a place of cultivation for sowing seed for you. So go to your place of cultivation however you will and send before you for yourselves and fear Allah and know that you will one day meet him and give glad tidings to the believers. God's purpose in creation of women is not merely to provide men with recreation. Their mutual relationship is like that between a farmer and his tilth. A farmer approaches his field not just for the sake of pleasure, but to acquire produce. Similarly, man ought to approach the tilth of the human race with the purpose of acquiring produce, that is offspring. What is of concern to the law of God is not the particular mode of cultivating one's tilth, but rather one should go only to one's tilth and not elsewhere, and that one should go to their purpose of cultivation. Means that you should men should only approach their own women instead of going on to other women and committing adultery. These words are susceptible to two meanings. First, that a person should try to maintain the continuity of the human race, so that when he departs from this world, there should be others to replace him in his tasks. The more they produce, there's more Muslims, so there's a bigger nation of Muslims. Second, that one should be concerned with the quality of the coming generation, how far it is endowed with religious devotion, moral excellence, and humanity, and that one should do all that is possible to promote these qualities. The latter part of the verse contains the warning that those who deliberately neglect these two duties will be severely taken to task by God. Verse 224. وَلَا تَجْعَلُوا اللَّهَ عُرْضَةً لِأَيْمَانِكُمْ أَن تَبَرُّوا وَتَتَّقُوا وَتُصْلِحُوا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ. And do not make Allah an excuse in your oaths against your being righteous and acting piously and making peace among mankind. And Allah is all hearer, all knower. So if a person takes a vow or discovers later that righteousness and common good are best served by breaking that vow, then he should do so. Expiation consists in either feeding or providing clothes for 10 poor people, or setting a free slave, or fasting for 3 days. Now, first of all, Allah is saying that do not make Allah or Islam an excuse for your oaths, against your being righteous and acting piously. For example, like, if you don't want to do something that's righteous, do not make Allah, if you want to do something wrong, you should never make Allah an excuse, make Islam an excuse for that. And if people swear by the name of Allah, like they say wallah on so many things, they might not be doing it right. They want to do something wrong, and they might be like, wallah, there is no danger in that, wallah that, wallah this. That is wrong, right? And if someone breaks their vow or breaks their promise, what they have to do is that they have to provide food or clothes for 10 poor slaves to make up for that promise that they broke, or set a slave free, or they have to fast for 3 days. So like, if you cannot provide for 10 people, provide clothes or food for 10 people, 10 poor people, then you have to free a slave. And if you cannot do so, then you have to fast for 3 days. This shows the importance of a promise that you make. You cannot just make a promise so lightly, like, like, if you're not sure of the future consequences that could happen, you should not make a vow. You should not make a promise, especially in the name of Allah. Verse 225. La la yu wala yu'akhizukum Allahu باللفظ في إيمانكم ولكن يؤخذكم بما كسبت قلوبكم والله غفور حليم. Allah will not call you to account for that which is unintentional in your oaths, but He will call you to account for that which your hearts have earned. And Allah is of forgiving, most forbearing. This refers to oaths which one utters either through habit or without any intent and purpose. The breach of such vows neither entails expiation nor makes man liable to God's reproach. So like, if you make an oath unintentionally, like, you cannot, like, not purposely, Allah will not, hold you accountable for that. But He will hold you accountable if you know something that's not gonna happen, and you make your way, and you make, you take an oath by with the name of Allah to make a way out of, your wrongdoing. Then Allah will definitely hold you accountable for that, because you know exactly what you're doing. You know what you're doing, and what you're doing is wrong. So Allah will make you hold you accountable for that. Then again, Allah says that Allah is of forgiving, most forbearing. First of all, here He's saying that you should, first of all, avoid doing that. Second, if you regret doing that, okay, if you sincerely regret doing that, Allah is definitely most forgiving, and you should come to Him, ask for forgiveness, and be sure that you won't repeat it in the future. Verse 226. للذين يؤلون من نسائهم تربص أربعة أشهر فإن فاءوا فإن الله غفور رحيم. For those who take an oath to keep away from their wives, the waiting is for 4 months. Then if they return, then indeed Allah is of forgiving and most merciful. In the legal terminology of Islam, this is known as ilah. It is obvious that harmony and cordiality do not always prevail in matrimonial life. There are occasions when strains and tensions develop, leading to discord and estrangement, basically divorce. But the law of God does not approve of that divorce, which causes a husband and wife who are legally tied to one another in matrimony to remain, for all practical purposes, alienated from one another as if they had ceased to be spouses. For this kind of abnormal discord and estrangement, God has fixed a limit of 4 months, during which the spouses are required either to settle their difference or to break the tie of the wedding, so that each becomes free to contract marriage with someone with whom a harmonious matrimonial relationship appears more likely. Since the verse mentions taking a vow, the Hanafi and Shafi jurists consider the injunction to be applicable only when a husband has taken a vow to not have sexual relations with his wife. According to them, the injunction does not apply if the husband merely forsakes sexual relations with his wife without taking any vow to that effect. The Maliki jurists are, however, of the opinion that irrespective of whether a person has taken a vow, the maximum permissible limit for abstaining from a sexual relation is in the wedding is for 4 months. A statement to, according to Ali ibn Abbas and Hassan al-Basri, this injunction is related to the cessation of sexual relations as a result of unpleasantness and in the relationship of the spouses. If it would not apply to if a husband were to decide to abandon sexual relations with his wife out of some beneficial consideration, say because the wife is breastfeeding at a time when their relationship was pleasant. According to other jurists, however, any vow prevents intercourse between a husband and a wife is irla, and ought not to last longer than 4 months, irrespective of the state of matrimonial relationship when it was taken. Some jurists have interpreted this verse to signify that if the spouses break their vow and reestablish relations, that they will not be liable to any expiation and will be pardoned by God. However, The majority of jurists are of the opinion that they are required to expiate. The statement that God is forgiving and merciful does not mean that God has forgiven them. It means that rather God will accept their expiation and will forgive them for whatever excesses that they may have committed against each other. Verse 227, وَإِنْ عَزْمُوا الطَّلَاقَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ. According to Usman ibn Masud and Zad bin Sabit, limits for restoration of matrimonial relations is 4 months. The mere termination of that period proves that the husband has decided to repudiate the marriage, and so divorce automatically ensues. It will be reckoned as an irrevocable repudiation. This means that separation between the spouses will come into force and the husband will not have the right to revoke it during the period of waiting, which is iddah. The two parties will, however, have the right to recontract marriage by mutual consent. Statements of Umar, Ali, and Ibn Abbas have reported that in support of this doctrine and have been accepted by the Hanafi jurists and as the basis of the doctrine. Other companions have others have agreed that this doctrine to the extent that divorce comes into force after 4 months, but they consider that the husband may revoke it during the period of waiting, iddah, and even after the lapse of that period, the spouses may recontract marriage by mutual consent. Verse 228. والمطلقات يتربصن بأنفسهن 3 قروء ولا يحل لهن أن يكتمن ما خلق الله في أرحامهن إن كنا يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر وبعولتهن أن أحق بردهن في ذلك إن أرادوا إصلاحا ولهن مثل الذين عليهن بالمعروف وللرجال عليهن درجة والله عزيز حكيم. Jurists and divorced women shall wait for themselves from getting married for 3 menstrual periods, and it is not lawful for them that they should conceal that which Allah has created in their wombs if they believe in Allah and the last day, and their husbands have more right to take them back in that period if they desire a reconciliation, and they have rights similar to those over them according to which is equitable, and men have a degree above them. So now if a woman is divorced and she has to wait for 3 menstrual periods, not 3 months. If she gets her period 3 times, then she can move on, and she can marry someone else. But if she doesn't, then she has to wait. And if let's say she's divorced, and if she's pregnant, she finds out that she's pregnant, then she does not have to hide it. She has to let everyone know. If she's marrying someone else, she has to let them know that she is, because Allah has ordered them not to hide it. And during the waiting period, during the iddah period, a man can take their woman back. That's the summary of this verse. If anyone has anything to add, they can add now.
I don't have anything. I think you explained it pretty well.
Same. Yes, you did. Jazakallah.
ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم سبحان ربك رب العزة وعما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام.